4. When the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the exiles were building a temple for the Lord, the God of Israel, they came to Jerusalem and to the heads of the families and said, "Let us help you build, because like you, we seek your God and have been sacrificing to him since the time of Esarhaddon king of Basra, who have brought us here." But Jeroboam, Jeshua, and the rest of the heads of the families of Israel answered, "You have no part with us in building a temple of our God. We alone will build it for the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us." Then the peoples around them set out to discourage the people of Judah and make them afraid to go on buildings. They hired counselors to work against them and frustrate their plans during the entire region of Cyrus king of Persia and down into the region of Darius king of Persia. At the beginning of the region of Axeros, they logged on occasion against the people of Judah and Jerusalem. And in the days of Artaxerxes king of Persia, Bisilim and Mithras, Tabel and the rest of his associates wrote a letter to Artaxerxes. The letters were written in the Aramaic script and in the Aramaic language. Rehum, the commanding officers, and Shimei the secretary wrote the letter against Jerusalem to Artaxerxes the king of Belarus. Rehum, the commanding officers, and Shimei the secretary, together with the rest of their associates, the judges and the officers over the men from Antipolis, Persia, Iraq, and Babylon, the emirate of Susa, and the other people whom the great and honorable ceremony deported and settled in the city of Samaria and elsewhere in Trans-Euphrates. This is a copy of the letter they sent him. To King Artaxerxes, from your servant, the man of Trans-Euphrates. The king should know that the Jews who came up to us from you have gone to Jerusalem and are rebuilding that rebellious and wicked city. They are restoring the walls and repairing the foundations. Furthermore, the king should know that this city is built in its walls and destroyed. No more taxes, tribute, or duty will be paid, and the rebellions will suffer. Now, since we are under obligation to the palace and it is not proper for us to see the king dishonored, we are sending this message to inform the king so that a search may be made in the archives of your predecessors. In these records, you will find that this city is a rebellious city, troublous to kings and provinces, a place of rebellion from ancient times. That is why this city was destroyed. When informed the king that if this city is built and its walls are restored, you will be left with nothing in Trans-Euphrates. The king sent this reply. To Rehum, the commanding officers, Shimei the secretary, and the rest of their associates living in Samaria and everywhere elsewhere in Trans-Euphrates. Greetings. The letter you sent us had been read and translated in my presence. I issued an order, and the search was made, and it was found that this city has been a long history of revolt against this king and has been a place of rebellion and section. Jerusalem has had a powerful king ruling over the whole of Trans-Euphrates, and taxes, tribute, and duty were paid to them. Now issue our order to these men to stop work, so that this city will not be rebuilt until I also order. Be careful not to neglect this matter, while let this threat grow to the detriment of the royal interest. As soon as the copy of the letter of King Artaxerxes was read to Rehum and Shimei, the secretary, and their associates, they went immediately to the Jews in Jerusalem and compelled them by forces to stop. Thus the work on the house of God in Jerusalem came to a standstill until the second year of reign of Darius king of Persia. 5. Now Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the prophet, descendants of Edo, prophesied to the Jews in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel, who was over them. Then Jehu son of Shemtias and Jehu son of Judah set to work to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem, and the prophet of God were with them, helping them. At that time, Antemiah, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Shealtiel and their associates went there and asked, Who authorized you to rebuild this temple and restore this sanctuary? They also asked, "What are the names of the men constructing this building?" But the eyes of their God was watching over the elders of Jews, and they were not stopped until a report could go to Darius and his written reply be received. This is a copy of the letter that Athenia, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Sheretes Burns and their associates, the officers of Trans-Euphrates, sent to King Darius. The report that he sent him read as follows. To King Darius, greetings. The king should know that we went to the district of Judah to the temple of the great God. The people are building it with large stones and placing the timber in the walls. The work is being carried on unendingly and in making rapid progress under the direction. We questioned the elders and asked them, "Who authorized you to build this temple and restore this structure?" We also asked them their names, so that we could write down the names of their leaders for your information. This is the answers they gave us. "We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth, and we are rebuilding in the temple that was built many years ago, on that a great king of Israel built and finished. But because our father agreed to the God of heaven, he handed them over to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, who destroyed this temple and deported the people of Babylon. However, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, King Cyrus issued a decree to rebuild this house of God. He even removed from the temple of Babylon the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple in Babylon. The King Cyrus gave them to the man named Sheretes, whom he had appointed governor, and he told him, "Take these articles and go out to deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and rebuild the house of God on its site." So this Sheretes came and laid the foundations of the house of God in Jerusalem. From that day to the present it has been under construction, but is not yet finished. Now, if it pleases the king, let a search be made in the royal archives of Babylon to see if King Cyrus did in fact issue a decree to rebuild this house of God in Jerusalem. Then let the king send us his decision in this matter. 6. King Darius issued an order, and they searched in the archives stored in the treasury at Babylon. A scroll was found in the citadel on the Euphrates in the provided of Media, and this was written on it. Memorities in the first year of King Cyrus, the king issued a decree concerning the temple of God in Jerusalem. Let the temple be rebuilt as a place to represent sacrifices, and let its foundation be laid. It is to be 90 feet high and 90 feet wide, with 3 cores of large stones and 1 timbers, and the costs are to be paid by the royal treasuries. Also, the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, are to be returned to their places in the temple in Jerusalem. They are to be deposited in the house of God. Now then, Antiochus, governor of Trans-Euphrates, and Sheretes, governor, and you, their fellow officers of that province, stay away from there. Do not interfere with the work on this temple of God. Let the governor of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild the house of God on its site. Moreover, I hereby decree what you are to do for these elders of the Jews in the construction of this house of God. Then the expense of this man are to be fully paid out of the royal treasuries, from the revenues of the Trans-Euphrates, so that the work will not be stopped. Rams and male lambs were burnt offerings to the God of heaven, and wheat, salt, wine, and oil, as requested by the priests in Jerusalem, must be given them daily without fail, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to the God of heaven and pray for well-being of the king and his sons. Furthermore, I decree that if anyone changes this edict, a beam is to be pulled from his house, and he is to be lifted up and impaled on it. And for this crime his house is to be made of pile of rubber. May God, who has caused his name to dwell there, overthrow any king or people who lifts a hand to change his decrees or to destroy this temple in Jerusalem. I, Darius, had decreed, let it be carried out with diligence. Then, because of the decrees the king and Darius had sent, Tatiana, the governor of Trans-Egypt, and Shechem and their associates carried it out with diligence. So the elders of the Jews continued to build and purpose under the prophecy of Haggai, the prophet of Jechus, a descendant of Edo. They finished building the temple according to the command of God of Israel and the decrees of Cyrus, Zechariah, and Archelaus, king of Persia. The temple was completed on the third day of the month Adar, in the 6th year of the reign in King Darius. Then the people of Israel, the priests, the Levites, and the rest of the exile, celebrated the dedication of the house of God with joy. For the dedication of this house of God, they offered 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 male lambs, and as a sin offering for all Israel, 12 male goats, for each of the tribes of Israel, and that they installed the priests in their division and the Levites in their groups for the service of God at Jerusalem, according to what is written in the book of Moses. On the 14th day of the first month, the exiles celebrated the Passover. The priests and the Levites had purified themselves and were all ceremonially clean. The Levites slaughtered the Passover lamb for all the exiles, for their father the priest, and for themselves. So the Israelites who had returned from the exile ate, together with all who had separated themselves from the unclean practices and their Gentile neighbors, in order to seek the Lord, the God of Israel. For 7 days they celebrated with joy at the feast of unleavened bread, because the Lord had filled them with joy by changing the attitude of the king Asher, so that he assisted them in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel.